And if you want the link, I'll have my contact information. Hopefully most of you have it already, and you're more than welcome to reach out, and I can send you any links to recordings, any notes, it's things like that, etc. So again, thank you very much. So we're going to talk today about the real estate market update, calling it bubbles, hot tubs, and pools, which will make some sense a little later on, I think. We're going to see how Winnipeg here fits into the national headlines that have been so prevalent lately. Just a little bit of background here. So my name is Michael Froese. I'm the managing partner at Royal LePage Prime Real Estate. We've been operating here in Winnipeg since 2001. We are Manitoba's largest real estate brokerage with over 200 agents and #1 in overall MLS market share in our marketplace here. We have 4 locations in Winnipeg: 1877 Henderson, on Kenniston, Portage Avenue, and Regent Avenue West as well. A little bit of background as well from Royal LePage Canada. You know, the moniker is it's the voice of Canadian real estate because of all of the earned media and top quality coverage that they get. And a big shout out to Phil Soper here. I'll give you a slide in a second as well. And Royal LePage is the nation's largest real estate firm at over 20,000 realtors. So this is coming. A lot of the information today is going to be, we're going to talk a little bit on the national scope as well. We're going to go drill home much more locally, of course. But Royal LePage in general, again, leader in over 180 markets nationwide, and we've got amazing leadership there. So some of the national stuff I'm going to be sharing, again, I'm not an economist. I'm a local real estate broker here in Winnipeg, but a lot of the economics charts and things you're going to see there, I got to give credit to Phil Soper, again, the most ranked, again, according to Swan Poll, the #1 most influential Canadian in real estate. So again, big shout out to Phil and to Carolyn as well for their leadership and helping, giving me some information and knowledge to share with you. So again, why am I kind of doing this? It was funny, my wife actually asked me this point. She's like, why are you doing this again? And I said, well, you know what, this is why. The headlines that we've been seeing across, more on the, you know, the nationwide, the national headlines, pardon me, have been getting, you know, they're there to get some clicks, but as well, it's some doom and gloom. There's some bad news going on out there, right? You can see some of these headlines: interest rates are rising, prices are falling, there's bubbles bursting, all these kind of things. Are we in a housing crisis? Is there a market recession coming up, right? And these were the most 2 recent articles that actually came out. I added them to my slide this morning. Just talking about, oh, mortgage payments are going to be increasing. You got to be prepared for 2025, 2026, that your mortgage payments could be a lot higher. And which is, again, all these headlines, nothing wrong with them in themselves, except when you start to actually read the articles, there's certain details that are omitted. There's certain facts that are omitted as well. A lot of them don't take into account. Again, you can see here Calgary, Vancouver, Toronto, which, hey, we're in Canada. And for those of you watching in Winnipeg, we know what it's like to kind of get sucked into the national headlines when our market is very different. It's unique, and it's a lot more Goldilocks, and we don't have the volatility of a lot of those other places. So sometimes Winnipeg gets sucked into these national headlines, and I'll show you the next slide here. This is really why I'm doing it. This is just what happened this from last night. You know, I posted some advertising for this this talk today, and one of my friends reached out and said, "Sounds depressing." And I'm like, "Oh man, it's really not supposed to be. It's not going to be too depressing today. I promise. I hope not." And so, you know, I made a little joke, and then she says, "Maybe I just assume the whole world's on fire, so it can't be good." LOL. And not about this person specifically, but this is sort of the sentiment. We have lots of conversations, right? We're doing, you know, close to 5,000 transactions a year. We have an interaction with a lot of buyers and a lot of sellers, and myself, a lot of agents as well. And so what are the conversations with buyers and sellers and people? And so sometimes, again, we can get sucked into that narrative, sucked into the national headline of, I'm assuming the whole world's on fire. This is just more crap to go on top of it, right? I'm already paying over $2 at the pump, and now it's this, and prices are going down. And so this is why I wanted to have this talk, was to give some insight, some more facts, some more insight into our local market, because all markets are local, right? There was actually a headline out of New Brunswick, and it said that why New Brunswick's house, you know, will not be cooling off anytime soon. So New Brunswick is different than Toronto, obviously, right? It was just different than Winnipeg. So I wanted to give some insight into our market, some of the details that sometimes they omit, and again, local insight. I want to back up for just a second because I feel the need to rant, just as an example. So when we look at these headlines, these latest 2 here, this is an example of, again, nothing against the reports, and I think we actually have some media on today, but you know, what the story didn't tell in both of these last 2 articles about how, hey, in 5 years, interest rate could be higher. I just want to see, because those came out this morning. So I just want to address those right away. Absolutely, right? If you've bought a house in 2020, 2021, 2022, you probably bought at a very low interest rate. Likely in 5 years, if that's what you had a term of a 5-year term, if the interest rate in 5 years will most likely not be 1 or 2%. Okay, I think we can agree on that, right? Most likely. So if you have to renew that mortgage, yes, your mortgage interest rate will most likely be higher, and your mortgage payments will be higher than it is currently today. But the articles do not mention are two things. One, they do not mention any potential rise in home prices, right? Because you're actually building equity in that time. So you're renewing, as long as you don't top up your mortgage, you're actually renewing at a lower rate, and it very well might be very similar to what you're paying now. But the other thing is that they don't mention the stress test. So if you don't know the stress test, right now, when a buyer gets approved or has to qualify for a mortgage, they have to qualify if the bank is posting a rate at, I'm making it up, 4%. They actually have to qualify at the benchmark rate, which is 5.25%, or 2% higher than the rate that are quoted. So in this case, at 4%, they have to qualify at 6%. So the Bank of Canada is actually quite on it, and they factored in the stress test to factor in rising interest rates, so that the people who are buying the mortgage at 2%, let's say last year or even this year at some point, they had to have qualified at 5.25 minimum. So they've already built in that qualification rate. And if your rate goes, or if your mortgage payment goes up from $1,200 to $1,500, which is in the article on average, that's $300 a month. Nothing to, $300 is a lot to some, a little to others, but most likely that's something that you can already have built into your qualifications, if that makes sense. All that to say is those two things were not talked about in the articles. It was really just, you can be paying more, so, bunker down and don't spend any money. Anyways, this is where we were, right? This is actually, I pulled this slide off of one of these talks that I did in September of 2020. And it talked about where we were back then in 2020, what was happening in the market. We had this wonderful, I shouldn't say wonderful, but this U-shaped, V-shaped recovery. And it actually ended up into a K-shaped recovery back in COVID, right? And this is kind of where we ended up most recently, kind of on the high note here. So in Q1, pardon me, the national average sale price in Canada increased 25.1% over Q1 2021, which is the largest quarter-over-quarter gain nationally, in history. So we know this, right? I think everybody's out there, unless you've been living under a rock, prices have escalated very rapidly. It hasn't been sustainable, and it won't be sustainable for the long term, because nothing can be sustained forever, right? Especially at the rate that we were going. So we're going to talk about that. Also, this is not just a Canadian thing. This is not just a Winnipeg thing or a Toronto thing. This is a global thing. The pandemic boomed across the globe. And if you want to call the price increases, bad or good, not to label them, but it's not even as extreme in some other places in the world. So know that this is a global phenomenon. This was a global thing, and it's a global issue as well. It's not just Canada alone, but we are going to drill down exactly into Winnipeg. But this is what a researcher said out of Harvard, is that why prices are so high today, but also why they might endure, right? I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. So I'm drilling down locally here into the Winnipeg Regional Real Estate Board. The statistics that are presented today are from the Winnipeg Regional Real Estate Board, right? Most of the statistics are going to be centered around single family homes. And if you see, that's the abbreviation is called RD, residential detached. That makes up the majority of our market, which is in the next slide, but also it includes all regions. Okay, when we say the Winnipeg Regional Real Estate Board, it goes everywhere out into these surrounding areas. Winnipeg is the bulk, but it does include the bedroom communities like LaSalle and Birds Hill and all that kind of stuff, St. Paul and out south as well, into Steinbach. So it is it's a pretty broad reach here. As well, I'll say the ones that are excluded, Winkland, Morden, Beautiful Plains, I believe those are excluded. And the residential detached sales account for about 75% of all sales. So we're going to focus more there. I'm going to talk briefly on condos as well, but that's where we're going to center the conversation. And again, if we go into every single segment of housing types and every single neighborhood, I'll be here for 3.5 hours, and I don't think anybody wants that. So we're going to paint Winnipeg with a little bit of a broad stroke today, but this is what's going on. This is how May shook up. Lots of numbers to look at here. So if you follow my cursor, I'll show you which ones to really focus on. But this is how May ended up here in sales. So there were active listings. There were 2,747 homes for sale in Winnipeg, in the region. 2,658 current listings. That means how many new listings came to market that month. Number of sales were at 1723. Okay, the total dollar volume of just under 700 million. And then these two numbers we're going to look at a lot. So I'm going to explain them a little bit to you, but we're going to go deeper dive in them. But this is really where this is going to tell this tale of the market. So sales to current listings means how many sales, the ratio of how many sales divided by how many current listings came out. So how many new listings came out in the month and how many of those new listings in the month sold. And also sales to active listing ratios, which is the total market here. So it's the number of sales divided by number of listings. So how many of the listings that are on the market, how much of the inventory was eaten up, right, in the month. So 62%. Now, if you see comparing to 2021, this is where the percentages come in. So active listings were down less than a percentage. Current listings, so more listings came to the market in May of this year than they did in May of last year. Number of sales were down 14.11%, and the dollar volume was relatively flat at just under 0.32%. So what's interesting about this is that as you keep going, and this is where I talk to my realtors all the time about comparing to 2021. 2021 was this massive kaboom in sales activity, right? We had this suppressed demand over COVID, right? We had lockdowns, shut down, the whole world economy shut down in 2020, if you can remember that, right? I think we all remember, hoarding on toilet paper and being locked up inside. So what happened is all this pent up demand goes, the savings rate was at 18%, I believe, in Canada. People had more money, they didn't know where to spend it. They spent money on home, and the value of somebody's home has really increased, not just financially, but in how important it is to them, right? Our homes have become our libraries, our schools, our offices. The importance of home and your living arrangements have never been more important. So all of these things contribute to a massive 2021, right? Boom in sales. And this is what garners a lot of the headlines. And you'll see sometimes, oh, the market's down 14%. Okay, well, what does that mean? Okay, we're comparing to the craziest and most busiest year in real estate history, kind of artificially propped up by a global pandemic. And yet that's what's getting the headline when, if you look across the board, number of sales in May, well, it's up 25% from 2020. It's up 14% from 2018. It's pretty flat with 2019, up a little bit from 2017, up from 2016. So on a 5-year average, it's actually ahead. This was a very strong May, right? But down 14% sometimes can get the headline. So we're going to dive in more into what other numbers to look at here, but we can't always get stuck in the comparison to 2021 because it's going to be one of those anomaly years. If you fast forward 20, 30, 40 years, we're going to look back on a big graph and it's going to be a blip, right? It's going to be an anomaly. So you have to be careful and to not compare always into 2021, sorry. But these are the numbers I want you to keep in mind. I'm going to talk about them a little bit more, but these numbers here, these are this is your relationship defined numerically between supply and demand, right? Again, I'm not an economist, but supply and demand drives price. Economics 101, first day, first note, that's what you get, right? Supply and demand. This is the relationship between supply and demand, numerically speaking. So if you look at, we can look at May of last year, and I like to look at the sales to active listing ratios more. So 73% almost, or 72.5% was the sales to active listing ratio. That's what we call our absorption rate. How much of the market is getting absorbed every month? So almost 3/4 of the market got absorbed in that one May. Now it's down, 10% to 62%, 62.72. So that in itself shows that the market is loosening a little bit, right? And you might go, okay, compared to 21, well, it's loosening. Absolutely. But look at the averages. This is normally where we're at. 34, 29, 29, 29.8. We're usually in May about 30%, right? Over the last 5 years. So that's a normal real estate market, 30%. And if you're at 35%, so closer to a third, that's about 4 months of inventory, which is right around the sellers, but it's sort of in that balanced market. It's a very healthy market. We've been at this accelerated market. We're still double where we normally are when it comes to market, I'll call it market tightness, right? And what that number gives, that supply and demand, that absorption rate gives us what we call our months of inventory. So when we say months of inventory in the industry, we talk about how many, if no other homes came on the market, how long would it take to sell out everything, right? And right now in May, based on that statistic of 62%, that's 1.59 months of inventory, okay? And typically sellers markets are 0 to 3 months, 3.5. I say 0 to 3 sellers market, balance 3 to 6. 6+ buyers market. And it depends on what there's different interpretations. This one's got 3.5 to 4.5 months. But basically, if you're under 3 months of inventory, it's still typically a seller's market. And if you look back to the previous chart, that's normally where we reside in this, is right about that 3-4 months of inventory. That's usually where we're hanging out in Winnipeg. And again, now we're at 1.6, we're at 1.59 months. So it's still the oversimplified analogy of this as well is I look at, I remember the Pizza Hut buffets. I don't know if they're still around, but I used to go to Pizza Hut buffet at the time as a kid. And imagine there's 10 people all wanting pizza. Well, at this point, there's 1.6 pizzas available for 10 people. And those 10 people got to fight over the 1.6 pizzas, which means people are going to be left a little bit hungry, right? That's kind of like how some buyers are left still wanting right now, right? And, Pizza Hut, in that case, could charge a lot of money for that pizza because everyone's starving. They want to get to the pizza. There's only 1.6 pizzas there. If you had 10 pizzas for 10 people, I mean, depending on appetites, but most likely there's going to be some pizza left over, and Pizza Hut cannot charge a lot of money for those pizzas because there's an excess, right? So that's really basic stuff, but that's why you can think of it in months is think about how many pizzas are at the buffet, right? So it's still quite low. There's still not enough pizza right now to satisfy all the hunger out there. This is how it shows up as well. This is one of my favorite charts that our board produces. This shows how many homes month over month or each month sell over list price, at list price, and under list price. So it's a very telling graph on how active and how intense, I'll say, the market is. So this is where the last 12 months looks like in May of 2022. So last month, which is not too long ago, it was at 63.69%. So that's how many homes were selling over list price, 7.87 at list price, 28.44% under list price. Okay. And so what we see here is it actually has come down from April and March of this year. This is really where it peaked for intensity, right? So May of last year at 60%. May of last year, but we were 60%. This is crazy, right? And now it was 67 where it kind of peaked, and now it's coming down a little bit to, again, just under 64%. So that's still the vast majority of homes selling over list price in May. This is another number here that we love to track. This is the sale price to list price ratio. And I just want to quickly back up. This is all residential detached now, so single family homes. This is on average how high homes are selling over list price or at list price. So, and this is, again, going from January 2021, how things went up. It was hanging out just under 103%. And you're going to see this a lot in all these graphs is a cyclical market. I'm going to notice that you're going to see a lot of things going up and down, up and down, up and down, because real estate is cyclical. It's seasonal, especially in Winnipeg. Guess what? It's winter. It gets cold, really cold. And this winter it stays cold for a long period of time with massive snow dumps and all that kind of stuff. So our market is very weather dependent as well. We see these natural, you'll see a lot of them in today's charts. But anyways, this is kind of what we peaked at in 2021 as far as percentage of list price. And then it kind of mellowed out here for the winter and fall months, which is normal. And then it really shot up here in in the first quarter and into May of 2022. So here is where April was, and you can start to see this. We've actually peaked in March, and it started to come down now, where it's just about 100, just under 105%, ending up in May. So you can see here, again, it's a peak, and as you can look at the downward trend, you can say, oh my God, we're not as good as we were. Yeah, but we're way better than where we were over here. So you're kind of like on the other side of a mountain, for lack of better words, right? And so that's where, again, compared to 2021, compared to the peaks, maybe we're not at peaks. Maybe we've already reached that peak, and most likely we have. But it doesn't mean it's bad. And we're going to go more and more into detail about that. You're still way ahead. This is what's done the average sale price the last 16 months. So since January 2021, right? You can see here again, and this is where I love when people ask, will prices come down? Well, of course they will come down, because everything always comes down at some point. Even look at the best real estate market, you want to call it that, the most fastest rising real estate market in history. Prices don't always go up month over month over month over month. What happens is they increase in certain months and then they go down because of certain months, and summer usually mellows out a little bit. And then, it ticks up here, and you can see it mellows out for the summer, goes down a little bit in the fall, and we have a little bit of a tick up. And here we were into the winter months, and then it goes up again. It shot up, right? So the last 5 months, it's gone up over 10% since January 2022. Can it keep going up at that rate forever? Of course not, right? There will be dips and there will be valleys. So the prices will always come down temporarily. Condos, I'm just going to do a quick couple slides on condos. So it's a similar thing here. It shows the current listings, right? The market is still quite tight in condos as well. And you can see here, though, this is where normally where condos sit, and this is closer now 5-6 months of inventory. And this is where we normally hang out with condos. And again, now we're down to under 2 months, right? So condos are still doing quite well. The thing with condos, and I'll talk about it a little bit later as well, but you can see inventory is down actually quite a bit more, right? 50%, 57% from where we normally are. So inventory is quite low for condos, right? And sales are actually, they're down again 12%. So if you remember, total sales are down 14%. Sales are down 12% in condos, but they're up majorly from where we normally are for condo sales. So condos are still performing really, really well. This is the condo. I put it in a line instead of a bar just to change things up. But this is where condo prices have gone the last 16 months since January of 2021. And again, you notice it's never this like completely vertical, up into the right line. It moves around with a general theme going up, right? Or a general trend going up. And so prices have been relatively flat here for the last few months for condos, as a result of the inventory and the sales shrinking a little bit more in line with each other. As well, when it comes to condos, the thing about inventory, which again, I will get to later, but condos have a much, you can produce more inventory with condos more than you can with residential detached homes. As an example, if you're going to put 1,000 condos in, well, you don't need as much land to build, high rises, right? 1,000 homes, you need a whole bunch of land. You need different permits and roads and land, all that kind of stuff. You can build 1,000 condos quicker and cheaper than you can build 1,000 homes, right? So inventory levels for condos can increase or decrease more than increase quite more rapidly than single family detached homes, right? So therefore it has a larger effect on prices and more of that softening. So that's kind of where we are right now, where we ended up in May and what the first, little bit of the year has looked like. So what's going to actually go forward, right? What's going to happen going forward, right? Because things right now are still really hot. So where's it going, right? An expected market change. This sort of was predicted. Again, you can see some of the headlines. And again, some of those headlines, again, they will filter towards Winnipeg. We are going to see some changes in the marketplace. We already have started seeing some changes in the marketplace. But again, it's not necessarily means bad change. It's just change. And change isn't always welcomed by everyone, but we're going to have some changes. So again, anybody, I would think, would realize that we could not keep going at 25% price increase year over year forever, right? It had to end at some point. What we can expect to see in Winnipeg is more of a softer landing. I'm going to get into it because there's a lot of good news that's going along with it. So one of the first things that we can expect to see, I'll say if you want to call it on the downside, is inflation is obviously it's been runaway. You feel it at the pumps, you feel it everywhere. You go grocery shopping, we feel inflation everywhere. And you know what? It's not fun, right? I'm in the same boat. I got to go there and put food on the table for my kids as well. And yeah, it's expensive out there right now. At the same time, what has to happen is, right, the feds know this, they have to get a hold of inflation, right? Not only is it bad economically to have too much runaway inflation, but also politically. So they have to throw some cold water on inflation. They have to stop it. That's why they've been rising interest rates. Interest rates are going to rise again. I will say that that's what I've heard from my sources and economists that I revere and I look at. There's probably going to be more rate hikes coming. Because they have to, again, this is what's predicted. You can see here, this is where we are right now in this chart. They're trying to get inflation back down to 2023, 24. So somewhere where it's sort of normal. And the way of doing that is the government has to intervene and sort of, they've used their words of actually triggering a recession. They got to raise interest rates. And we've seen some interest rate hikes sharply, and we're probably going to see some more to help ease that inflation. It's going to be a temporary pain for long-term gain. I'm going to talk about this chart in a second, but this is just, again, the cyclical nature of sales. So what we can expect, interest rates will go up. Inventory levels are rising, as we have seen through the previous charts. Month over month, inventory is increasing, right? Sales will most likely crest in June, maybe a late fall push. And why I say that is because that's what happens every year. Okay, I'm not going to be Nostradamus on this one. This is what's happened since 2018. This is how every year looks, right? So every valley is the January, every peak is May or June. every time, right? So it peaks May, June, sometimes into July, sometimes weather dependent, right? And then sales, typically this is sales activity, sales go down, they come back up, they go down, they go up, they come back down. Sometimes there's little blips. This blip, there's your pandemic. That little thing right there is your pandemic, right? And then it goes back up, back down, back up, back down. And sometimes you get these little pops and valleys. In these cases, there were some Omicron and other things and shutdowns and lockdowns in there. Also some weathers and blizzards and whatever else, right? That's kind of this one here. But nonetheless, sales go up, they rise in the spring months, and then they come back down and they mellow out through the summer and then into the fall. And usually, sometimes we have a late fall push. You can see some of these ones here. These little tick ups are sometimes a late fall push. Sometimes we see it, sometimes we don't. So why I'm saying this is what we can expect here. I think sales are we're going to be nearing our peak here in June into July, but most likely it's going to be a busy June here, and then we're going to start approaching again the back half of the year where sales generally start to slow down. Right, sales to listing ratio, as I showed earlier, is softening. Right, it's went from sorry, where were we at? Sorry, it was at 72, now it's down to 62. Still really strong, but it is trending in that direction, right? Sale price to list price ratio is also softening. It's trending in that direction. As I said, back half of the mountain at 105%, that is still really, really good, right? But it's not at 106 or 107% what it was earlier in the year. So those things are trending that way downwards, that there's softening of the market that way, right? Sales are still going to be really strong here in June. It's going to soften throughout the summer and fall months, as it always does with the graph here. And again, there's going to be a bit more room for buyers, a bit more selection out there. Things will soften up a little bit. I'm going to get more into detail. So if it's softening, does that mean a bubble? Right? Is there a bubble popping? Is there a bubble bursting where things are just going to go boom and sales are going to plummet and prices are going to plummet? The answer to that is no. It is not time to panic. Just because there's softening, just because there's change, doesn't mean it's time for panic. I'm going to tell you why you need to be. I hate the Packers. I'm a Lions fan, unfortunately, but I hate the Packers. But this one came to mind, right, when Aaron Rodgers said, relax, we're going to be okay. That's kind of the message I want to give you is relax, it's going to be okay. There's no big bubble bursting. There's no hard landing, crash landing. I'm going to tell you why. Okay, some good news. Canadian defaults, historically extremely low in Canada, right? Here is your Great Recession. That was our default rate, right? Picked up. There's a default rate meaning foreclosures. You can't pay your mortgage, you give up your house, right? That's where it was. Over 1 in 10 people back then in the States had to give up their house and defaulted on their mortgage. There's our 2008 blip. So Canada is extremely good at mortgage default. Our Bank of Canada and the lending policies are actually much tighter, and it shows. Okay, immigration, right? A really again, oversimplified economic outlook real estate is people and jobs. If we have increasing population and job growth and unemployment is low, that means housing is going to be good. More people with jobs means housing. Okay, that's just really oversimplifying it. But immigration has picked back up. We're planning as a nation and as a province to welcome more and more immigrants, new immigrants into our marketplace, and they're coming in with jobs highly skilled and in the workforce. Right. This is from Sagen, which is a mortgage insurance company, and as well, they did their studies, and the financial fitness of Canadians on a whole are actually really strong, right? So homeowners are consistently in better financial shape, right? They've got good scores, they got good credit, they've got equity in their homes, they're taking care of their money, for lack of better words, right? So we're in good shape. And again, like I said, there's a record level of employment, right? I think it's down 0.1 from the record of 5.3, but employment is also on the rise, right? So again, we're having more people come in, we're having more people with jobs come in. That's good news for housing. Also, I love this chart or this graphic here, because normally this Canada household savings rate is usually about 2 to 3%, which means you for every $100 you save $2 or $3. Well, right now it's at 11%, which is 5 times the usual average and where we're at. Right, the peak I believe was closer to 18 to 20% back in the peak COVID days, but now it's come down to 11%. That still means Canadians are saving more money than ever before. Right, there's fewer options, less places to go. Traveling's picking up a bit, but nonetheless, there's $280 billion here estimated here from RBC Economics. An extra $280 billion of cash to spend. Okay, so basically Canadians got more savings, more cash to spend. right? This is what really dictates everything though. Okay, so we've got some on the demand side of things, people still value housing. Housing is still important, but living arrangements have been never more important. Canadians have more cash to burn, they got more savings in their pocket, and we still have a housing shortage, right? Canada is still short 1.8 million homes on a national level. I'm going to show you it more on a local level soon here. But essentially, and that's actually last in the G7 as far as our housing units per population. So Canada as a whole has a housing shortage, and there's just not enough inventory to actually really start tilting the scales when it comes to bubbles bursting and prices plummeting, right? Keep in mind this one, right? So we talked about housing shortage, there's still less than 2 months of inventory, okay? And so when we talk about bubbles bursting and things like that, if sales activity slows, which again, it will in the back half of the year here, again, on a month-to-month basis, but what you really care about, most people care about, is not so much sales activity. Realtors really care about sales activity, right? Because we need more homes to sell. But prices are what you really, really care about at the end of the day, right? If you're a homeowner, you're like, is my house going up in value or is it going down in value? What's going on with my equity position, right? That's what you more often than not care about. This is where you're going to see prices soften in these ranges here, right? If you're in a heavy buyer's market. Well, here's where we're at. We are nowhere near a buyer's market right now, especially a heavy market. There's just not enough homes for sale. We do not have enough supply. So even if demand wanes, again, like I said, 14%, prices are still going up, right? So you said, well, demand is going down, but prices are going up. Yeah, because there's not enough supply. And as I mentioned earlier, supply cannot be, condo supply can get built a bit quicker. Putting 1,000 home development together takes years. So that housing supply problem is not going away anytime soon. Governments, municipalities, local government is trying to speed things up and try and reduce red tape. Again, I hope, and I think it'll be probably a bit of a platform for the mayoral race here in Winnipeg, but it cannot get up to this level anytime soon. Okay, it's going to slowly move there, but not at a large rate where you're going to actually affect massive price decreases. Because this is, I want you to remember this. This is one of the pictures I want you to remember, right? This is again oversimplification, but housing does not go up to the right every time, month over month over month over month, up to the right. Businesses don't do that either, right? Your personal finances, your life, you can never grow perfectly month over month, year over year for all time. There's dips and valleys, okay? The path is upward, but it's not linear. There's peaks and valleys with a general trend of upward to the right, which is our positive growth, right? Demographic shifts, immigration cycles, or immigration trends, economic cycles all trigger these type of things. And what we're in right now is this economic cycle is going to be high inflation, high interest rate rising, or interest rates rising, which is going to affect things, right? This is what is also a really key thing to remember is in real estate and in housing, the highs of the high are usually more intense than the lows of the lows, right? So we see, the increases are greater than when the decreases are here. I know I kind of mumbled that, but I think it makes sense, right? So things usually go mostly up, temporary periods of down, followed by larger increases, okay? So that's why, again, when people say, our prices are going to go down? Of course, because they always go down. I'm going to show you that. They always go down at some point temporarily, but then they always go back up. So historical, and this is just also showing you, this is where the rates are, because the rates get all the attention right now. Rates are going up, rates are going up, rates are going up. You'll be paying more for your mortgage, your house. Okay, so this is where we're at, right? If you look back again 15 years, right, this is where things were back then. This is the discounted rate that banks were advertising, again, sourced from Rate Hub, right? And so I like to look back a little bit towards even more recently, though. So even right now, right, I remember I bought my first house right here, right? I was just under 5%. That's right about here, 5%. I was at 503% was my first mortgage rate that I ever bought in my house. And man, I was pumped to get 5%. Okay. And now, the world's falling apart because it's at 4. So I get that. And I get the pain that people feel because we're not in this extreme low anymore. All that being said is I'm going to show how this translates to actual price increases in Winnipeg here. So 2018, and a lot of numbers here, but follow my cursor. In 2018, there was a bunch of rate hikes. Sorry. There was 1, 2, 3, 4 rate hikes from 2017 to 2018. And then it hung out here. And this is the bank rate at 2% into 2020. So all of 2019 rates were higher than they are now, because right now it's at 1.75. Okay. So rates were higher than they were now during this time period. And this is what happened to the average sale price, right? 313 to 307, 296, back up to 316, during that time period. And then in 2018, the average sale price finished off at 321 with a peak of 332. And in 2019, it finished off at 324, 140, peak of 335. What this means is, what I'm showing you this, is that even interest rates were there, we saw moderate price increases. It didn't, there was all these rate hikes and we didn't bottom out, right? Now you can see, well, it went down temporarily, between July and September of that year, prices dipped a little bit. But again, remember the graph, a little bit of a dip, and then it starts picking back up, right? So even through 2019, where rates were quote unquote high, higher than they are now, currently today, prices hung on. Okay, so that's kind of the good news. This one I absolutely love. This, again, remember my wavy charts. This is the average sale price, residential detached in Winnipeg Real Estate Board, Regional Real Estate Board, in the last 10 years, right? It's not, there's peaks and valleys all over the place, right? Peaks and valleys all over the place with a general upward trend. So definitely, have we seen this? Boom, right? Here's this year, right? That's the big of a blip. So if somebody says to me, are prices going to come down? Yes, they have to, right? Because it always does, temporarily. Prices always come down a little bit and then they will go up a little bit. So how long will they, how sharp is the question? How sharp will they go down? How long will they go down? And it's not going to be, because of all those factors I just talked about, because of lack of supply, it's not going to be as drastic as the national headlines, right? It is going to be a softer landing. They were not going to come down, boom, hit the bottom of it, because there's just not enough inventory as well. There's still lots of demand, not enough supply to cause a massively sharp decrease. This is another one. As far as, the back to the Aaron Rodgers relax thing, this is the average sale price since 1977. Okay. And you can see here, it goes up almost every year. Winnipeg is Goldilocks. We have this wonderful ability to kind of insulate ourselves from the rest of the chaos of Canada and the world. In 1980s, you can see it went down here a little bit. That's one blip from 55,000, 53,000, and then back up the next year ahead of 1981. So a temporary little thing here. And I think there's a couple more that are very, very mild though. Sorry, here, 89,000, 87,000 in the mid 90s. And then here you go, it ticked back up, right? So I'm just trying to say this as delicately, but as straightforward as possible. So if you bought a house, let's say in the peak, where prices really, as I mentioned, 106% over in that March of this year, and you are expecting to sell your house in 2 months for more money, it's probably not going to happen. However, wait a while, wait a little bit, and prices will come back, right? There's going to be these seasonal blips, and we have an interest rate hike anticipated again in July, coinciding with our natural plateauing and decrease of sales and price activity, means it's going to come down temporarily, but then it bounces back. Okay. So, and again, these are why I highlighted these ones here in red. This is where those interest rates were hiked, right? We had some interest rate hikes at this time, prices still went up. We had interest rate hikes here as well. Prices still, again, 283 to 293 in 3 years. Huge? No, but they held on. This one, 315 to 324 in 2 years. This is where interest rate, just before the pandemic, interest rates were actually rising. Remember, we had 3 rate hikes during this time, and prices hung out for 2019, or interest rates hung out in 2019 at a relatively higher than they were the last 2 years level, and prices still held on. Then interest rates plummeted, right? Pandemic, and we've got the shoot up. So hopefully that just gives you a little bit of confidence in our marketplace in Winnipeg that we're very resilient to these volatile swings. This is the other analogy I want you to keep in your head, right? And back to the title, hot tubs and pools. We've been in a hot tub for 2 years, okay? And if you have, however many people here, and maybe they didn't all have happy faces, these must be sellers, right? Not the buyers. If they were buyers, they'd be frowning, right? But so you had all these buyers in a hot tub, right? And so 2 things. One, there's not a lot of room to move around. You're bumping into everybody, right? There's not enough room. There's not enough inventory. What's going to be happening is you're going to move into more of a swimming pool. There's going to be more room to move around, okay? Does that mean a swimming pool is bad? No, look at that. Summertime looks great, right? And here's the other part of this analogy I want you to, so buyers are gonna have some more room to move around. There's gonna be some, the bidding wars, as I mentioned, they're slowly de-intensifying. They're still there, but they're de-intensifying, Okay, the how much over list price is also de-intensifying, as a result of people positioning their homes in the market and pricing them differently to start with, which I'm going to talk about. So the other thing I want you to keep in mind with a hot tub and a pool, if you're in a hot tub for an hour or 20 minutes even, and then you go jump into a pool, let's say the pool is at 85 degrees, beautiful temperature for a pool, 85. And also be like a cold, something like warm, 85, beautiful temperature. But if you're in a hot tub at 104 for a while, and you jump into an 85-degree pool, the 85-degree pool feels cold. Is it cold? No, it's beautiful, but you've just been in a hot tub. Conversely, more Winnipeggy, if you are in minus 30 and you got no gloves on, your hands are freezing, and you come inside and you run your hands under lukewarm water, what does it feel like? Right? It feels like your skin is blistering off. Is the water hot? Nope. It just feels that way because you've been in the cold. So we've been in a hot tub for 2 years, and we are not in this big giant pool yet. We are slowly getting there. Maybe it's down to 100 degrees or 90, 99, 98, something like that. We're slowly moving towards the pool, okay? And just because the pool feels colder than the hot tub doesn't mean it's bad, doesn't mean it's actually cold. Some of the market cooling. Yeah, it's cooling to go to a beautiful 85 degrees, right? And this is a healthy real estate market, okay? And if you ever watched any of the stuff I've ever done in the past, right, before pre-pandemic, Winnipeg has this healthy, beautiful real estate market called the Goldilocks. Not too hot, not too cold, just right, very bankable, very dependable. That's a healthy real estate market, and that's what we're going to have to return to. This is not sustainable. You're going to want to get out of the hot tub, right? Or you're not going to be happy. So this is the other analogy I want you to keep in mind. So as things do change, as we move towards a pool slowly, right? Here's what happens in the marketplace. If you're buyers and sellers out there, buyers are the first ones to react. Buyer sees the headline, buyer gets his interest rate hike, buyer's the first one to react, and they react quickly. Right? Sellers typically hold on a little bit longer, right? Because they've been planning to sell their house for a long time. Maybe they've got it ready and they have these pricing expectations, and they really want to hold on to that, right? Because they see it as, there's a standoff. The buyers out there trying to get a deal, and the sellers are hanging on to the values, right? So you have this standoff. Now, again, that's not going to be necessarily the case as much of a standoff in Winnipeg. What's going to happen is just slow expectations, and approaches are going to change on how you get the value of your home. So let me give you an example of this. 2 homes. This is what happened last, 2 years. You put it up at $399 and it's sold for $520, right? Now, again, oversimplification here. I'm broad stroking this, right? $399, $520, like, oh my gosh, everything's crazy, right? Different scenario. List price at $549, sells for $535, right? Which scenario would you rather have? Right? Now, of course, I'm not talking about, yes, I don't know how many days this took to sell. And, if it took 2 months, if it took longer, it was a big pain in the butt. I get all that. But I'm just saying from a math standpoint or from a home value standpoint, right? Sellers are going to start positioning their homes in the market more on where they're a price that they will be willing to accept. And maybe that's more of a negotiating room for buyers, or maybe instead of there being 10 offers, there's 3 offers, or there's 5 offers. And maybe instead of saying 120 over, maybe it only sells for 40 over, or something like that, right? So what this is to say is all those downward trends can still sale to listing ratios and all those type of things can still lead to prices hanging on, right? So the approach on how you get there just might be a little different, okay? None of these, that's not one good, one bad, one right, one wrong. Approaches may change. So in closing, that is where I want to leave you, is those 2 images. If you can get those 2 images burned into your brain and, around the bar or whatever you're doing, talking with neighbors, right? Yes, we're going to see some price depreciation because we have to. And it happens every single year, pandemic or not, interest rate or not, prices always fluctuate, but it will be temporary, okay? We're moving towards a hot tub, moving from a hot tub to a pool. It's going to feel colder. And let's say sellers out there, and I talk to agents, my seller is freaking out. It's been 3 days, they've only had 5 showings, right? And so we're used to the hot tub. And that, 5 showings in 3 days, what the heck? I thought there'd be 100. Yeah, we're not in the hot tub anymore, right? We're not in Kansas anymore. So, but hey, 5 showings in 3 days, that's actually in the grand scheme of real estate, long-term history, that's really good. And if you get really close to the list price, or if you even get 1 or 2 offers, my God, that is, again, historically speaking, fantastic. It's a nice, warm pool. it's going to be, it's a good thing. It's a good thing for our economy. It's a good thing for our city. It's a good thing for buyers. And it still is good for sellers as well, right? Because most sellers have to go buy something, right? So keep that in mind. Those are the two images I want to kind of burn into your retinas, burn into your brains. That's what we're moving towards. If anybody has any questions, I'm definitely more than happy to answer any questions. You can throw it into the Q&A box. I'll give it another 30 seconds here or so while I'm jibber jabbering. Throw it in the Q&A box, throw it into the chat box, and I'll get to a question. But I do want to thank everybody for tuning in. I hope that was informative. I hope you got something out of it. And again, if you want, my email is on there, michaelfroese@royallepage.ca. Email me if you want a copy of some slides or a recording or anything like that if you have any questions. Or as well, you can follow my company at Royal LePage Prime on Instagram and Facebook, all that kind of stuff. Follow me, just Google my name, you'll find me. I do have a question coming in here. Why is the Edmonton Calgary market much cheaper than Winnipeg? Well, I don't believe it is. It depends on what you're looking at. So I don't know who this is, the attendee, but the average sale price, I could probably pull something up, but the average sale price Edmonton Calgary is ahead of Winnipeg. It depends on what, charts and abbreviations and things like that are very important when looking at average sale price. First of all, average versus median. A lot of times reports come out as average versus median. Average is always higher than median typically. As well, if you're looking at detached homes versus the entire aggregate of the market, right? So for instance, residential detached home average sale price will usually be much higher than a total sale price, right? Because condos are typically cheaper than homes, or more affordable than homes, or lower prices. So Edmonton and Calgary, I can try to find it quickly here if you want, but they are ahead of us. They are more, their average sale price is higher than us. So it might take a look at the graph, whatever you're reading, and you might have to be comparing apples to apples, and there might be apples to oranges there. So that's kind of best idea. I can probably find it here in a little bit, but I see some other stuff coming in here. Yeah, so so a chat said 550 to 600K right now for the average sale price in Calgary. For sure there, but Edmonton and Calgary are ahead of us still. For a long time, actually, Regina was ahead of us for some reason, and we actually surpassed them. Now they've actually had a bit with oil, right, and all that stuff. They've had a tougher time there, and so we finally passed. Regina was ahead of us for like 20 years. It was weird. But any other questions? I'm not really seeing any. So again, thank you all for tuning in. Hopefully you got some good insight. Again, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to talk and chat anytime. And I'd say the best advice I can possibly leave anybody with is when you're looking to buy or sell, use one of our amazing realtors at Royal LePage Prime, and they will help you navigate this market, because that is going to be absolutely key, is navigating the market when it's changing so quickly the way that it is. So big shout out to all my realtors out there, Royal LePage Prime. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful rest of the day.